All right, so a couple of things that I realized when I started to drill this hinge. You can maybe see that it is now drilled, and it's just like we've done before, right? You figure out how many you want or how many makes sense considering the application, lay them out and drill them. However, before you go randomly putting holes into this hinge haft, keep this in mind. You need to maintain edge distance on the cowling. So what I had done was, like I had showed you, I had positioned the door closed, made sure it was in the correct position. I put this hinge on and I had pinned it. However, what I chose to do was I wanted to make sure that the hinge, wherever I put the holes on the hinge, that there would be enough edge distance on the cowling, with the hinge pretty much hiding the opening. I couldn't really tell where the holes needed to be. So all I did was pull the hinge pin out. Don't worry about the hinge pin. Move the hinge a knuckle over. Now you can clearly see the edge of the hinge, and you can see it in relation to the edge of the cowling. You can do it a couple if you need to. And now you can run the hinge pin in just to hold that hinge temporarily in place, but with the hinge offset, you can see the edge of the cowling. And you can measure back from the edge of the cowling a comfortable edge distance, and then transfer that line onto the hinge. And then you can extend that line on through the length of the hinge and put your holes. That's kind of sort of what I did. I just kind of figured out where the edge distance needs to be on the cowling from the edge of the cowling. And then with the hinge offset a little bit and pinned, I could kind of visualize where that line would extend onto the hinge and then put the holes. So now that I've got the hinge laid out and drilled, all I need to do at this point is put it in place correctly, run the pin through, and then I can drill it. And you can see where those holes are in relation to the hinge itself. You can see that the holes are offset toward this edge quite a bit. They're not centered on the hinge in this, centered from this orientation. You can see that they're biased closer to this edge. And again, that was just derived from offsetting it onto the door hinge, running a pin through, and making notes of the edge distance on the cowling. Pick a safe edge distance, mark a line, and then transfer that line onto the hinge, and then extend that line the length of the hinge. Figure out your hole spacing, put your holes in. So now I can put this together. I can run my pin in, hopefully. Another thing to keep in mind, the cowling is made up of multiple layers. You can see that there's this darker colored area here, and then around the edges it's not as dark. These lighter edges around the perimeter are a lot thinner than this main area here, which is quite a bit thicker. You might have a little bit of difficulty getting your hinge pin in because this is thick and the hinge pin is almost recessed into this thin area. Also remember that once you get your hinge pin in, to completely clear it from this high area. You don't want the hinge pin resting up on here because it's going to hold everything kind of high. So you want to make sure that the pin is in all the way and it's not hung up on anything. And then again, check your door layout. And then at this point, you can make sure that the door is closed. I'll probably put some tape back here to hold the door shut and kind of hold it into position. And then I'll just match drill. the holes from the hinge into the cowling. I want to make sure that everything is laying correctly. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer these holes. Let me get some tape underneath here. So I just put some tape on the door itself. I'm going to reposition the door if I need to. Make sure you get this right, because once you put the holes into the cowling, there's not a whole lot you can do to change that. Alright, so that looks good. Everything is pinned, everything is shimmed. I'm going to go ahead and tape the door to the cowling now, just to hold it in place so it won't move. That looks pretty good there. Stand by, I gotta get a drill bit. Alright, so now I got the actual drill bit off of the drill press. I'm going to go ahead and mark these holes. Just spin the drill in those locations a couple of times. I like doing this by hand. I could put the drill bit into a drill motor and spin it, but that will spin it too fast, and the drill motor is a little bit more clunky. Okay, those are very hard to see because the fiberglass is almost clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker and I'm just going to color in the areas where that drill bit is going to contact the cowling. So just colored in a couple of where the holes are going to roughly lay, and now when I run the drill bit down in there, I'll be able to see it really easily. Alright, I can see those just fine now. So again, I gotta take that back over to the drill press. I'm just gonna pull the pin out, take the door off, and I'm gonna drill these holes. Of course, I'll have to do these by hand. I can't take this whole thing over to the drill press. Small drill bit at first. Actually, I think what I'll do is this. I think I'll leave this like it is. I'll drill these holes initially with a small drill bit. Like I said, I usually use like a number 50. And then I'll flop the hinge in place and I'll match drill through the hinge, through the cowling, and I'll already have that kind of a pilot drill. That number 50 pilot drill will already be in place. So I should be able to go through the hinge, find that pilot hole pretty easily, and drill it to the correct size. Let me do that. Stand by. All right. So again, I believe this is a number 50. I don't know that for sure, but it's close. Doesn't really matter what you use. As long as it's something small, and it's not so small that it will easily snap and break. So now I got to center punch those. I've got one of these spring-loaded center punches, and you can adjust the amount of tension on it. The more tension you put into it, the harder it snaps, the deeper it will make a mark. Of course, for fiberglass, you don't need that. You definitely don't want to crack anything, especially here with these holes being near an edge. So I'm going to back this off so it's basically nothing. And go ahead and punch these. Simple as pie, if that makes sense. Don't know where that came from, but there it is. All right, time to drill. You want to back it up a little bit so that you're not just plunging through with this thing wobbling around. I don't recommend using your hand, because if you don't know exactly where your hand is, guess where this drill bit's going to end up. But I've done this enough. I'm comfortable just using my hand just to kind of steady the fiberglass. You want to drill basically 90 degrees to the fiberglass, to the cowling. You don't want to drill down here or up here. You kind of want to see how the holes lay and drill 90 degrees to it. All right, so now I'm going to switch bits to the final size. And I'm going to pick a hole. I guess it doesn't matter which hole I start with. I'll pick an end hole here. Match drill it. And you guys know by now I'm a little bit of a clean freak, so every time I drill a hole I like to clean it. That also just makes sure that nothing is between whatever it is you're match drilling, and things can get kind of screwed up if you've got a lot of debris between the layers and they start to kind of walk around on you. Okay, one cleco is in. I'm just going to work my way down the hinge now. But for video purposes, I'm not going to get crazy with the cleaning, so I'll just kind of go through this a little quick, and then I'll do my cleanup afterwards. These stubby clecos are really nice. I think they must be ever so slightly, and I mean ever so slightly larger in diameter than the normal length clecos, because these seem to hold a lot tighter. This part of the cleco, I think, might be a little bit bigger in diameter. It just seems to hold tighter and more secure than the standard size clecos. And with them being short, even if you're using a regular size drill bit, you can get between them and drill a hole without the cleco itself jacking around with the chuck on the drill. So I don't have a lot of those, but I do like to use them. So now all my holes are match drilled. I'm going to take this back apart just so I can clean all the debris out from between the pieces, and then I'll put it together and see how it looks. All right, recleco. Alright, so that is now pretty much attached the way it's going to be when it's finished and on the airplane. So here's my first test. First of all, I want to make sure that there is no binding on the hinge itself between the knuckles from one hinge half to the other hinge half. That could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. You want to be able to get the door open and close without having to try to fit it between knuckles and then get it to finally shut. So let me see if I can get the hinge pin out. First of all, let me take this tape off. Alright, the hinge pin, I can move it by hand, but it's tight, which is okay. I got to get it up over this fatter, thicker area of the cowling. Can I pull it out by hand? It's very difficult to get a hold of. Okay, it comes out by hand. The door opens and closes freely. So that's nice. It seems to be aligned nicely. All right, let me repin it. It's difficult with this fatter area of the cowling because that tries to put a bend in the pin, and the pin doesn't want to bend because the hinges don't want to bend. Okay. All right, so that's decent. I don't see any major issues with that at the moment. Let me get this flipped over and we'll see how the door looks from the outside. Oh, I see part of the problem. And these clecos here are right on the edge of the door, so it's kind of jamming the door. The door is kind of jammed along these clecos here, so let me pull some of them out. So what was happening was the edge of the door here, the clecos that hold the hinge that I just drilled just happened to come through the cowling right along the edge of the door, and it was kind of jamming the door. So I took a few of them out, and I bet you that hinge pin will come in and out of there a lot easier now. But just looking at the lay of the door, it looks great. It's nice and tight. It doesn't feel stressed, but there's no gap between the door and the cowling. I can almost get a fingernail under it. But I'm more than happy with that. That's a really great fit. So at this point, it's just a matter of countersinking the fiberglass for the flathead rivets. So I have to countersink these holes here for the flatheads, countersink these holes here for the flatheads. Like I said, the door fits really good. It's nice and snug against the cowling, so I think my shims are just right. So I'm going to go ahead and use the shims as they are, countersink these holes, and rivet these hinges in place. All right, let me do that. I'm not going to waste time videotaping that because we've done hinges. We've done rivets by now. So let me get that done, and I'll talk to you guys later.